Good afternoon, everyone from Dunrovin Ranch. It's a lovely spring afternoon. The weather's warm and the blood is flowing in our parts of the world. When we started this whole animals as healers and helpers, my great friend and Dunrovin bookkeeper and all-around great gal Paula said, well, I know a gal who has used her dogs for ski joring. Would you be interested in meeting her? And I said, bring her on. Specifically, when she said that she had learned in Alaska. So I am really anxious to introduce you and myself to Judy Creeth from Colorado right now. But first, I'm just going to hand it over to Paula and ask Paula to give us a little bit of a background on how we met Judy. Okay?
Well, okay, sort of, because I was thinking about that, Judy, and couldn't come up with this. This is actually a weakness of mine, is remembering exactly the first time I've met somebody. It just, then all of a sudden they're just in my life, and it's great. And so I'm actually going to defer to you for a moment. Do you recall exactly how we first?
Well, it's so interesting that you say that, Paula, because I have been racking my brain. All of a sudden, we were great friends. And I mean, for the life of me, we did all these amazing things together, but I can't remember how we first met.
So I was trying to think, like, was it through dance? Was it through, mutual friends? Was it, I couldn't, or my work, at the time, or?
The first thing I do remember is that you used to be an avid race walker. Do you remember that? And you used to do that really cool thing when you walked really fast and everything shifted. And I thought, man, that's really cool. You were really, really into it when I first met you.
Yeah, I used to teach it and give seminars, like workshops for corporations, and teach it at the Parks and Rec. Yeah.
Right. And then I came to visit you in Montana, and we did all these fun things in Colorado. So I guess I'm just so glad I met you.
I'll just say we did. I was involved in a what is that called when they do a preliminary scouting for a archaeological or some kind of survey, and they make you remember. We went out and we stayed in that trailer, and we were looking at all the cow pies everywhere. Our job was to count them. I'm not sure, but we looked at a lot of cow pies. So we've had a couple of adventures for sure. And I followed you to some of your dance presentations and classes. And
well, Judy, give us a little thumbnail background on you. From what I know, you are a dancer who loves movement of any kind. And that took you to Fairbanks, Alaska, if I'm not incorrect. Could you give us a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I'm a trained dancer. That's been my job for many, many years. And back in 1996, I was in a place where there were many, many dance teachers moving from all directions. And I felt that if I was really going to spread my wings and be able to really be teaching at the level that I wanted to, that I might need to go to a place that really needed more teachers. And so I also did have a boyfriend there at the time, so I wasn't completely on my own. But I decided that I would move to Fairbanks, Alaska, thanks to, in great part, a wonderful friend of mine named Joe Scott. That's another story too. But I moved to Fairbanks, where I was able to really spread my wings and have opportunities to dance and perform in all kinds of different, incredible situations, just because a lot of people wanted to visit Alaska. So a lot of great artists came up. It was, especially in the winter, and I had some wonderful opportunities to dance with them. And at the time, I also was meeting with many, many different friends, and many of my friends at the time were very involved with dogs. And so I had the wonderful opportunity of being able to do some adventures with them, especially, as you'll see in the slides, dog sledding. I had the chance, many generous friends took me for a few rides where I fell completely in love. But I will, that's a little jump ahead. So both it was dancing at the university, dancing at the Fairbanks Summer Arts Festival, and also the wonder of outdoor experiences, which kept me there. I thought it was going to be 2 years, but I ended up staying an amazing 15 years in Fairbanks. So it became a very, very big part of my life. And as we talked about, Suzanne, it's still in our blood. It's still in our blood. It probably always will be, for sure.
Well, I think one of the things that people don't understand who have not lived in Alaska is how long the winters are and how short the days. Yes. And you go to work in the dark and you come home in the dark. And if you don't get out at midday and do something really fun, like dog sledding or skate skiing or cross-country skiing or skating or whatever, you go a little crazy. So Alaskans are really good, hardy people, and the minute the sun's up, they're out there. And both, most of the major communities, Juneau, Anchorage, and Fairbanks, have groomed cross-country ski paths, groomed dog sled paths. I mean, they are very into winter. One of the things I also remember about Fairbanks in particular were the beautiful ice sculptures that they had every winter. But tell me how you then got into the ski joring from the dog sledding. Do you want to go ahead and start your presentation?
That would be great, because I definitely touch on that with my slide presentation. So let me go ahead and start sharing my screen, and I hope to answer your questions through that.
Now, they have ski joring in lots of different, it's not just in Alaska, right?
No, not at all. They're ski joring in a number of different locations, including in Montana.
Definitely. I think ski joring in reality is very, very popular in many places, here in Leadville, in Colorado, in Montana. I think that it's not quite as well known because it's sort of a great kept secret in some ways, but it's a fantastic sport. So can I ask you, can you see my screen okay?
Yep.
See the screen? Okay, fantastic. Well, I'll go ahead and get started. So first of all, I really want to thank you, Suzanne and Paula and James and Dunrovin Ranch, for inviting me to speak today on a topic which I had not thought about for so long, but I had such a passion for when I lived in Alaska. So the first slide you'll see today is of myself and my one of my most loyal companions, my dog Latka and Happy, and also Barney was one of our dogs as well. Mm-hmm. So ski joring, let's, for a moment, the definition. So the definition of ski joring, as from a variety of sources, is the action of being pulled over snow or ice on skis by a horse or horses, dogs, reindeer, or at times with a motor vehicle. Today, more recently, it can be both recreational or competitive. The word is derived from the Norwegian word of ski driver. Somehow I'm not able to change my, okay, yeah, great. All right, so briefly, a little history. This activity dates way back to a time when skis and animals were used for transportation. Laplanders from northern Norway, Finland, Sweden, and the Kola Peninsula of Russia have for hundreds of years harnessed reindeer and together on skis used this mode as a way to travel long distances over the frozen ground. I was first introduced by friends to dog sledding, and I loved it. It was exhilarating, it was breathtaking. But I also knew that I could never afford an entire dog team. Dog mushing is a full-time year-round commitment, and one sees the beautiful pictures of the gorgeous, spectacular Alaskan wilderness. But the reality is, for every hour on the sled, there are hours and hours of shoveling, of dog care, of feeding, and also the vet bills that can occur just for dog care year round can be very, very expensive. So I was really thinking, well, what can I do to be able to enjoy this amazing activity? I love dogs. And suddenly the reality of ski joring became a very real possibility. So with my love of dogs and my love of skis, I had been an avid skier as a young woman, but I also needed to transition from the alpine skiing to Nordic skiing for knee issues. But I was still just crazy about skiing. So it became a natural for me to think about starting to do some ski joring. For one thing, it required only 1 or 2 dogs, and they could easily be companions through fall, winter, summer, and spring. So here we have our first two ski joring dogs. One is Barney, and the other is Latka. So my former husband, Mark, and I began with these 2 amazing dogs. Barney was a champion from the word go. He was the most amazing dog, and we had got him free on a ad, and he was fantastic. But we had to train little Latka, as you see in this little picture, by having her pull a log behind her when she was young as we fed her treats on the way. But it turned out she was a natural athlete, and she became also a fantastic ski joring dog and one of my main companions and support in many of these adventures. So here we see the picture of kind of our final team, our big team. Here you have Barney and our dog Sally, we called her the big Malamute cutie, and Pierre and Latka. They became kind of our main team. In Alaska, it's not hard to find working huskies, as many mushers need to give away dogs as they get older, or they simply do not work out in the team. But here's the key. In order to be a good ski joring dog, you actually need the best dogs, which often translate to lead dogs, which are just some of the main dogs of kind of the radar, so to speak. And they need to be independent. They need to be able to think for themselves. And they also need to be fearless about traveling sort of on their own. So we learned this the hard way because we had many generous mushers who did offer us different dogs from different positions, wheel dogs or dogs who were used to traveling in the back. But the fact was that when they got out front without a lead dog, they weren't sure at all what to do, and they missed their teammates. So we did have to do a lot of trial and error to find the right dogs for ski joring. So we had some wonderful dogs that include Barney, Latka, we had Lennon, Happy, and Sally. We ended up again with these 4 main dogs as our team. 2 dogs per team was ideal for that. So what all do you need to ski jor? Well, what is needed primarily, of course, number 1, you do need to have a love of snow, skiing, and dogs. And I think it's very, very important to be an experienced skier. Some people have tried to do it kind of like, I'm going to try ski joring. And I think they rapidly find that having a solid skill in Nordic skiing is a very, very important part of this activity. Also, with the equipment for day trips, you have dogs, snow, and a sense of adventure, skis, poles, boots, harnesses for the dogs, a ski joring belt, tug line, which is usually a bungee, so it has some give and take, and very important to have a quick release in case you get into trouble and the dogs decide to chase an unexpected animal. You need to be able to get off that line pretty quickly. You also need a variety of clothing for any weather. And layering, of course, is the best. because you can give and take a lot. And with ski joring, sometimes you're working really hard, so you do build up a sweat, so you need to be able to take those clothes off and on. You need a backpack, food, water, chocolate, and a way to build a fire if necessary. So that would be great for a day trip, but for expeditions, all the above is important. But also, as you'll see here, a pulk is incredibly important for a longer trip. So these pulks are often known as Norwegian pulks. These can be very, very helpful because, of course, you need a lot more gear to survive in the Alaskan wilderness when you're going for long distances. So here we see some pictures of myself in the White Mountains with the pulk. And in this case, one of the challenges of the pulk is deciding where is it going to be located. You see, we began with the pulk located in front. So the pulk is between myself and the dogs, which seems like a really good idea. As you see, there's a handbrake on the pulk. Now, the hardest thing is getting up to the pulk if there's a very tricky situation, because the pulk is weaving in and out. The dogs are doing what they're supposed to, but the pulk often is going in different directions. So getting up to the brake was a major feat. And I'm very happy to say I did survive this method, because we had some really close challenges of trying to ski jur in this place. The most preferred method is to have the pulk behind the skier. But this also is a challenge because it creates like a push me, pull you, because the dogs are pulling and the sled is behind. So you have a lot of push me, pull you action that can really kind of jar a little bit in the hips. But nonetheless, the pulk is an incredible addition to any long distance trip. Very, very important. Another main thing that's incredibly important are backcountry skills. These include chopping wood, building fires, making food, choosing the right clothing, and staying enthusiastic and clear thinking through all situations that can come our way. One thing about clothing, as I said, you need to layer, and you need to have capilline that will breathe and wick away moisture. Clean socks are really important because once socks get wet and dirty, they don't stay warm anymore. So that's something you can barter clean socks with just about anybody. It's pretty great if they fit. So you also can have something called bunny boots, which were white plastic boots, which were great for wet areas of the outdoors, of course, after you get done with skiing. You also, this picture, you see a ruff around my head, and a very popular ruff was Wolverine, because Wolverine would create a pocket of warm air. So when you breathe and it was very cold, it would actually warm your face. So Wolverine was a very popular ruff to use. Also, you want to make sure that, again, you have plenty of gloves that you can take on and off. And in drier weather in Fairbanks, once you get done, mucklucks are also very popular. They breathe, they're very beautiful, they're very comfortable. So depending on if it's warm or cold, mucklucks were a great choice for foot gear. So here we show some of the expeditions that we took. In these slides, these are expeditions into the White Mountains near Fairbanks. And the journeys were very incredible. What you see in the first picture on the left is myself, Sally, and we are here in a white canvas tent. And these canvas tents were truly incredible because they breathed, they didn't have a lot of condensation, and amazingly, you could have a wood-burning stove inside. It was almost like home. And the best thing was that you didn't need any reservations because you were able to camp wherever you wanted to. So that was pretty wonderful. And I must say, Mark was an expert outdoorsman, and he made it possible for many of these incredible journeys thanks to his skills, knowledge, and his love of the wilderness. On the other side, you see cabins. And in the White Mountains, there was an unbelievable network of cabins that would take you through all kinds of different terrain in Alaska. Sometimes we would ask groups of people to come with us, and it was like one great big party. But it did require great planning and reservations because you had to make sure that you got to each cabin that you had reserved. And if you hit bad weather or a whiteout, sometimes it became really, really difficult to actually make it to the cabin that you had planned. But it still was a great party back in the White Mountains. We had some wonderful times. Some of the major challenges that we faced, one in particular, was a situation called overflow. Overflow is when a frozen river opens up due to pressure from the water from underneath, and water flows onto the frozen ice. Sometimes this water is covered with snow and can be very hard to see. So the big challenge and the big danger is that getting wet at low temperatures can be very dangerous, and overflow needs to be handled with great respect. We had an experience in the White Mountains where I ended up on a side of the river. I was on one side, the dogs were on the other side, and I didn't know what we were going to do because there was overflow throughout the river. I actually needed to be rescued with a hydroplaning snow machine that was able to bring us all back together again. So that was one of the big memories and making me very, very respectful of overflow. One other situation that one doesn't think about so much in the winter, we actually had a big, wonderful party for a Thanksgiving, and we had a great big group of us at a cabin. And what usually happens to melt water is you bring snow in, and you need to find clean snow, of course. So usually people melt snow for water, but occasionally people will take snow out of the river or water out of the river. Well, this was a very experienced group of us, but the challenge was that nobody knew if the water had been fully boiled or not. Well, let me just say that about 10 of us from this trip came up with a whopping case of Giardia. So I was to learn that in order to really make sure that you're safe with water in the outdoors, you have to make sure that that water is boiled for quite some period of time. It was still a fantastic party. We had a great time. One of the other fantastic journeys that we took, I took a couple of trips on the mighty Yukon River. In the winter, the rivers of Alaska turn into frozen highways for dog sledding, ski joring, and snow machining. The Yukon River is a main trail for the sled dog race that's often known as the toughest race on Earth, the Yukon Quest. Many volunteers work tirelessly to cut the trail for this incredible race. And those volunteers themselves have some amazing stories about how to find the most secure trails. Well, the fact is that each year the river freezes differently, sometimes smooth and straight and a clear path to go. But with other years, what happens is it freezes and thaws, and then jumble ice occurs in the river. And so that you get big chunks of ice like we see here, and it's called jumble ice. Sometimes these jams make for very tough trail cutting. So the makers of these trails work very hard to find the path of least resistance through the jumble ice. After the race, skiers, dog sledders, and snow machiners can, with gratitude, enjoy these beautiful trails to have some wonderful adventures on the Yukon River. So we had some great journeys on the Yukon, and every time I hear about the river, I have a very big spot in my heart for the Yukon River. So here I am with my trusty dogs, Sally and Latka. I have my anorak parka on and a hat that was made from a local musher who made hats for a living. One of the warmest that I have. It's a beautiful day. Everything's going well, and it was one of those wonderful easy ski Joring adventures. This was actually a trail that was right behind our house. And so it certainly was one of the funnest ways to just get out, get your dogs exercised, and spend time on Saturday, Sunday, any time that there was snow and beautiful weather. So that was a big part of, again, my great adventure in Alaska. Here we see a photo of myself and my amazing dog Latka, and people wonder what is Latka. And Latka is in fact a potato pancake that we enjoy at Hanukkah. So I always people had sometimes she had some wolf in her and Malamute, but she was tiny. But I also called her my incredible potato pancake. So many times people would ask, "How's your pancake?" And I'd like to take a moment and dedicate this talk to the beautiful and hardworking Huskies that love the Alaskan wilderness. So in closing today with my slides, Latka and I moved back to Colorado in 2009, primarily to be closer to my elderly parents. I have many wonderful, wonderful memories of Alaska. The photos from this presentation, except a few of those noted, are a personal compilation of many incredible journeys from 1997 to 2009 with a variety of friends and loved ones. And I really want to thank these companions for teaching me the skills to journey into these remote areas and the courage to live a dream of the Alaskan wilderness exploration. I also want to give love and gratitude to the precious dogs that accompanied us. And a very special thank you to my husband, Chris, for listening to all my stories and truly helping me very patiently to create this presentation for you today. So I always like to end with a little wolf howl, which goes, "Ahoo!" because that's what Latka used to do. So thank you very much.
That was wonderful, Judy, just wonderful. And I have to say, it brought back a lot of memories for me. I did much of this myself, and I have some questions for you.
Sure, I love it.
Yeah, the polk. I just recently gave my polk away to a young woman who worked here at Dunrovin, who is very backcountry oriented. And my polk was set up with some very long fiberglass rods that would attach to my waist. Okay, and I'm curious, if you putting the polk behind you, how did you attach it to your waist? So you had the dogs, and then you, and then the polk.
Right, and so that's such a great question. So when it was in front, we couldn't have those rods, so because we actually did hand over hand to get to the brake. But when it was behind us, we did have those rods, and that in a lot of ways made for a much steadier feeling to be pulling. But as I said, when you did, it was almost like push me, pull you. The dogs wanted to go one way. But yes, when they're behind, we definitely had to have those rods to keep the polk steady.
Well, and to keep it back from the back of your skis. Otherwise, it would run up on you.
Running you over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I noticed on the one picture of you and just you and your dogs alone skiing, that you had kind of a big belt on. Was that part of the?
Yes. I have to show you.
Part of the sled. Okay.
I have a little show and tell to show you today, if it's okay with everybody. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
So here, and I have to thank my friend Robin Truesdale. She's a great friend. We've done many things, including creating a film together. But it just so happens she has beautiful huskies, and she did some ski Joring. So I'm going to turn my camera down so you can see. Okay, so here you have the ski Joring belt. Okay, so here's the belt that Paula, you mentioned. Okay, and unfortunately I don't have a bungee. All right, but here also, okay, is where you attach the bungee cord. All right, so you've got the bungee cord here. Now, Mark, can you bring the harness? Now, here's the bungee cord. And then in front, okay, is where you have the dogs, all right, attached here with these amazing dog harnesses, okay? And this is often a real symbol of the outback, are these dog harnesses. And with this loop right here is where you attach the bungee cord. And so that's kind of the direction and the pull. But you want to have, again, that quick release to make sure that you can get out of trouble if you end up in a bad situation.
So the free ends of the bungee cord are in the loops attached on your belt, and then it goes through the harness.
That's right. So that goes through the harness, and that's how we are attached right there. And sometimes the thicker the belt, the most comfortable. But in this case, Robin has a really nice belt that attaches. So she was kind enough to say, if you need show and tell, so that's my show and tell for today is the cord and the belt.
Do you still have all your equipment or not?
Well, that is such a great story. I had a friend who, it's a funny story. I digress a little bit. I had a friend who was courting a lady, and she wanted to learn how to ski jur. But so what I did is I didn't know if I'd ever use my gear, and this was a very dear friend. So I donated my ski juring gear to this young lady, and I don't know if she ever ski jured in her life. And being asked to give this presentation, I sort of was real sorry because I missed my gear. But when I brought Latka back, she was already a very sweet old lady dog. And that's actually how I met Chris, because I'd always have to have a little help getting her in the back of the car. So Chris would always see me trying to get her in the back of the car with a biscuit. And so he thought, that woman looks kind of interesting. I was always, come on, Latka, you can do it. But she passed away in around 2015. She was around 18 years old when she passed away. So she stayed with a wonderful, she had some wonderful dog walkers who adored her. And they really helped me so much with her at the end as well. Yeah.
So I had a couple questions about reading ice. And this is a skill that, I've done a lot of outdoor horseback riding here in Montana. Uh-huh. And I did not realize that, having done so much skiing, and I did some dog sledding as well in Alaska. And in fact, I still have my dog sled. Your story about getting rid of your gear really rang true with me, because at one point when we were leaving Alaska, Sterling had a garage sale, and he put my sled out for sale, and I got really angry. I said, no, you don't understand. I may not be that person anymore, but I want that sled, and I still have it stored here, my sled. At any rate, this reading ice is a really important quality, to be able to read snow on ice. And I found it very useful in backcountry horseback riding, because and I didn't realize that I had developed this skill in Alaska, because Alaskans, it's a life or death situation to be able to read the overflow, the ice, the snow on top of ice, and what's underneath that snow. Exactly. So kind of address that again, if you wouldn't. I mean, it's a really important thing, because it can be a life or death issue.
That's very true. In fact, right before the talk, I was reading up on a dog musher in the Yukon Quest who unexpectedly hit this kind of overflow, and it became a complete life or death situation, and it can happen very fast. So sometimes you see the water. It's just like a river in the winter. So you can actually see it, although sometimes it's this beautiful aqua color. So you know that it's not a river per se, but it's a beautiful aqua color. But as you say, other times it's covered in snow. So it's like just a slushy layer that, you go over thinking it's ice, and all of a sudden you're up to your knees in in water and moisture. So being able to read those situations is also, as you say, a life or death kind of situation, because if it's 20 below and or 40 below in some cases, or even lower, it can be life or death right away to be able to get out of that wet gear. So I know that we didn't hit a lot of overflow, but we had to be very, very aware of it anytime we were, and even sometimes when you're on a trail, you pass little creeks, and little creeks can also be full of overflow as well.
I was going to say, is that the main situation where you have to be able to read the ice? Are there other types, other things to watch for?
Also, you have to be really careful of thin ice, and that becomes. I was also reading up for the trail breakers for the Yukon Quest. You know, they have these pretty big, heavy-duty snow machines, many of them, and if they pass over a section and you hear all of a sudden, you know, if you hear a crack, that's one of the things they have to be really careful of is when ice is thinner.
So it's both the look and the sound that inform you.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, and the Alaska Natives are absolute experts at all of this. In fact, many of the villages in the northern part of Alaska are not built for summer convenience. They're built for winter convenience. So even on the coast, a place like Kotzebue, Alaska, is almost impassable in the summertime because it's a tundra and it's really soft, wet ground. But in the winter, it becomes a total highway, both on the ocean and on the land. So, you know, the placement of communities in Alaska is somewhat dependent on winter as much as it is on summer resources.
Right.
Well, that leads me, one of my questions was, are the skis or the sled adaptable for summer? Like, we just built a stone sled to help out at the ranch for pulling hay. We're training a horse how to pull it so we can use it to carry hay and probably other things eventually. But we added these plastic runners to the bottom of the ski part of it to help it in various terrain. And I'm just wondering, is there, I don't know, I mean, I certainly wouldn't use my cross-country skis, you know, in the summer, but they're not designed for that. But I wonder if, since summer can be your only sometimes, you know, the time you really want to get out, is that an option?
I recently saw, and I can't remember exactly where I saw it. I don't know if for travel it would be the best, you know, to get out hiking because it would be a lot of drag. But I think that there's an Indian term, and Suzanne, you might remember. It's like a travoy. Yeah, what was it? Yeah, a travoy. And I believe that people do use those sleds for like hauling things, like wood or chores, if they need to, you know, set things up. But I'd never took
not something you can attach to the skis to adapt them for the summer. Maybe probably not.
So dog mushers in Alaska will take the engine out of a four-wheeler. Yes. And they'll have their dogs pull four-wheelers that they ride on dirt trails, and that's how they keep their animals in shape. You see them all over the place, hauling these engineless four-wheelers.
Right. I've also seen little VW buses from way back 1967 or who knows what, but yeah, they do. They get very, very creative of ways to keep their dogs in shape for the summer. I think one of the hard things about summer training is that the ground can be a lot harder, and so it's harder on the paws sometimes when they're training on the hard summer ground.
And the temperatures. People don't understand that in a place like Fairbanks, it can get up to 100 degrees in the summertime and down to below 50 in the wintertime. So the dogs have a real difficult time under those really hot temperatures.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. And I didn't actually have a picture of a dog yard, with dogs lounging in the summer, but there are many, many summer months where, the dogs spend quite a bit of time. Oftentimes they have a circular chain that they can at least run around and get exercise. But I do think I do feel like it's a tough time, because you still have to care for those dogs every day. But trying to keep them entertained and hug on them and take care of them, which was one reason why we were able to take our dogs with us everywhere we went, which was really helpful, which was really great.
Yeah.
Do you only use Huskies, or are other breeds conducive to?
I've seen people ski-jur with standard poodles. I saw somebody have a team of corgis, but I think they a friend of mine got a kick out of that. With the sled dogs that are part of the which are part of the races now, they have actually incorporated many different faster breeds with the sled dogs, with the Huskies. But like anything, it's always a trade-off, because if you have very fast dogs who don't have good coats, that means that you have to make sure that sometimes, they have to run with coats, or you have to make sure that they're kept very warm in the winter. So some of the faster dogs, I've heard of whippets, being bred into some of these ski-juring dogs. So you might get more speed, but they're not as well designed to be living in the Alaskan, in those deep cold temperatures.
In fact, they'll breed them for different aspects of racing. There are short-term races, like the Alaska Fur Rendezvous in Anchorage. That was a very, and they have one in Fairbanks as well, which is entirely a speed race. It's not a distance race. It's over a very short period of short, by that I mean tens of miles, not hundreds of miles, but tens of miles.
Right.
And I knew one of the women who won that consecutively for many years, a woman named Kathy Frost. And they had specially bred dogs just for speed dogs, not for long distance dogs. And it's exactly as you pointed out, the speed dogs had shorter coats, and they had a lot more of the speed animals in them as opposed to the Huskies. So there are actual, and everybody knows them by kennels. A dog from this kennel can be worth more than a dog from this kennel. Racers sell their dogs. Yes. And they're known for their breeds.
I had one really interesting experience with that, and that was that at one point I really wanted to try to see if I could get a faster dog, a more competitive dog, and so I went to a very reputable company, a very reputable group, and this woman was a racer. And she had very fast dogs. And so I had thought, oh, Latka's really fast. She's amazing. So to try them together, I put Latka side by side with this highly competitive racing dog. And, you talk about dogs telling you what they need. So I felt terrible about this, but within about 100 yards of having them together, Latka just jumped off to the side, and sat down and just said, I'm out of my league. She just said, I can't compete with this. That was her dog words to me, I can't compete with this very, very fast dog. And it was a true learning experience for me, because I didn't really want to go fast. I just wanted to go into the wilderness. So anyway, it was a real, dogs do communicate. They talk to you. They tell you what they need. And that was for me, I said, thank you very much, but I'm going to stick to my Huskies because I think they fit me the best.
How fast do you go? Like, is it just a little faster than when you're just cross-country skiing on your own, kind of?
I think you can go up to 30 miles an hour.
Yeah.
For sure.
Wow.
Yeah, it can be, let's see, I've heard around 30. I mean, the fast racers can really get some speed. So, and
But for you, for recreationally, it's a little faster than cross country, but
it really depends on what part of your outing. At the very beginning, when the dogs are like, wow, let's go, you can hit high speeds. But once they've gotten into their stride and mellowed out a little bit, I would say, you can cover like 10 miles an hour for sure, pretty easily. And so what you have to be careful of is that you can go far distances very fast. So you do need to kind of keep track that wherever you go, you have to also come back. So you have to be real sure that you know your way, and but the dogs, Latka was so amazing. If I ever felt lost or not sure where I was, she would just pick up the trail again, she was the dogs were like that. They would know many things that I couldn't even see or be aware of.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you liked to go in the wilderness mostly, but are there official trails set up, predetermined trails, just like with cross-country skiing? Are there ski joring trails?
So the White Mountains is a great example for that. The White Mountains is wonderful because it's BLM, I believe it's BLM, and it's a recreation area. So they keep those trails in beautiful shape. And they also keep, through the, again, like the Yukon Quest, the river trail that is so beautifully cut. I'm sure it's the same with the Iditarod too. And also there's another place, in Fairbanks, they do have these amazing trails that are already set. One is at a place called Creamer's Field, and there's this entire maze of trails that go through Creamer's Field. And I just have one more story to tell you about the reality of how quickly you can go from a day trip into trouble. And that's that a group of friends of mine and I used to go skiing at Creamer's Field, and we'd all meet for an hour of skiing. And of course, these trails, when you get in there's a maze of trails. So I came with some of my friends, and some of them, the way you did, Suzanne, they had a pulk behind them, and they brought a few of their kids with them, and the kids would have a blast. Just so much fun. But one day we were there and the temperature dropped very fast, and we ended up in this maze of trails. And it must have been which started about 0, which was okay, but it dropped to 20 below when you get into the lower countries. Well, one of the little ones peed in their snowsuit. And so all of a sudden, what started as an outing became suddenly a very dangerous situation. And so we had to put the dogs on a tree and walk straight for the highway so that some of these women could use their cell phones, and their husbands came to the highway and picked us up. We just bushwhacked all the way through so we could get everybody out of that situation as fast as possible. So it all worked out fine. But again, it was a real wake-up call to just how careful you need to be in those, what could start off as a simple day trip. As Suzanne, as you were saying, it can get serious really quickly at those temperatures.
Well, Judy, this has just been delightful. I really, really appreciate Paula having introduced you to us. I hope you will stay connected to us. There will be a recording of this broadcast, and we will send it to you. I hope you saw our newsletter yesterday that went out, and we'd love to have you come back. I'm going to ask if any of our viewers have any questions. I don't see any right now, but if they do have any in the interim, we can email them to you.
Sure.
This has really brought back a lot of wonderful memories for me from Alaska, and it's just wonderful to connect with you.
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. And Paula, thanks for bringing us all together. And
Yeah.
thanks to James and Suzanne. I'd love to share more stories with you at some point. Yes, thank you.
Oh, yeah, do come to Montana. We'd love to have you.
Oh, I'd love that. And the photos and the video of the ranch are so beautiful. So it's a wonderful project to be able to sign in and see what all you're doing.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Keep coming back.
Thanks. Oh,
Come back for sure. And thank you, Paula, for making the connection. This has just been terrific. And the wonderful joy that you get out of creating a relationship with dogs that you actually work with is just beyond words, is it not, Judy?
yes. It's they can be some of your closest friends and companions. There's no doubt. And the bond that was created with dogs in the wilderness. You see that from mushers and racers, and it's a bond like no other, because you're so dependent on these animals as well as they're dependent on you, and their abilities are just fantastic, both for love and companionship and athleticism and just care. So it's wonderful to be able to share these stories.
Well, I'm sorry that we've run out of time, but we do have another presentation in about 10 minutes. So I'll give James an opportunity to close us out and get us started on the next presentation. I do hope you come back sometime, Judy, and thanks again for a lovely presentation on a great topic.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a great afternoon.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Judy.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Paula. Bye.